Hello, everyone. Welcome to Land Timber Stream. It is another Sunday. We've kind of got a week to review, got a week coming up, got to think about our plans, how we're going to, attack the study plan, our study plans, our lagging plans, whatever the case may be. So let's talk about that. I'll talk about my particular case, and I got several sort of developments to share and, disseminate some information with that may or may not be helpful to you doing your studies. But one, we're going to talk a little bit about EVeng Pro. There have been some interest in that. People, a lot of people are not sure what the difference is between Community and Pro Edition. Is it worth it, etc. Well, I'm going to show you some things that I've learned about it that now that I've started using it a little bit, and maybe that will be helpful to you. And then we're going to talk a little bit about network lessons. We're going to talk about Azure. We're going to talk about netbox in Azure, some GitHub, automation and some things like that. So I'm really excited. Even though I haven't done a lot of study this week, I'm excited to talk about these things. And this, which is amazing, is from the launch this morning. The photos courtesy is linked there in the agenda. But this was a Delta Heavy rocket launch this morning, launched the Parker Solar Probe, and I watched it live at 3:33 a.m. during takeoff. So it was exciting, and it's on its way, man. It's going to be the fastest moving object ever made by humans in space. So it's heading its way towards the sun. A successful launch so far this morning. Exciting stuff. But yeah, let's chat. Let's chat some CCIE study stuff. A couple things. First, EVeng consoles. I'm going to do a little demo as well. And the Eve team is pretty active with the community. There are some people that are active. One of the devs, Redfish, has been a great support, and he has been very involved in the Discord channel, which I've linked in the chat. If you're not in Discord yet, there's a lot going on. It's pretty busy. It's interesting. I've been monitoring. Like I'm in several, different chat rooms, if you want to call them that, forums, if you want to call them that, Spark rooms, if you want to call them that, Slacks. I don't know what people call this more, anymore, but I'm in several of them. I'm in Router Gods. I am a member of, community member of Network Collective. I'm in the INE Slack. I am a member of now, actually it's called Network to Code. Joined that this week in Slack. And of course, I'm a member of several servers in Discord. And I have to say, there are always lulls due to what people are doing, especially the weekend. People are busy. They're studying. They're spending. I'm going to talk a little bit about that work-life study balance. But there's been a lot of great conversations, and not just. That's one thing I like about our Discord is, there are some social elements, but we're pretty heavily involved with just the topics, the hardcore, nerdy, networking related topics. And that helps because there's so much to read and filter. And I like that, there are sometimes conversations that take off and get long in our Discord channel, but they're substantive. They have great content, and they're about a protocol or about some product. Will it do this or will it do that? And there's some great things that I've learned by my discussions, and among those is, I've met Redfish, who now we're on LinkedIn. We've had long, chat conversations at night about career, and that's part of the reason, I started my channel, and others have done theirs as well. It's for the same, to interact and meet people. So Eve, they graciously provided me, sort of a temporary Pro license. So I did not purchase Eve, and it has been EVeng Pro. I used EVeng Community Edition before, and I reviewed it on this channel. I compared that edition with GNS3, and of course with Viral, and the performance on my machine. And they saw that. I know the people at Viral saw that. GNS3 saw that too. Commented on Twitter. GNS3, of all three, I've had the least amount of contact with the GNS3 devs. I know they're busy, and I know they do quality work. But anyway, with that being said, that's why I have Pro. So I can't tell you, you should buy the Pro edition because I bought it. I can't do that. And I can't tell you should buy the Pro Edition because, you know, I've been using all these diverse and more deep, deep layered features of EVeng Pro version that it offers. I can't tell you that. And I can't really say a lot about it except that I have started to use it. And I've started to do a little labbing. I'm trying to do smaller labs, like my focus is on learning the knowledge I need for the written. And with networklessons.com and some other things, there's some mini labs I've been able to just fire up really quick, capture a few packets, see it for myself, and that has been great. It's been a great use of, the lab environment for the last, I'd say, month or so. I've been firing up the lab EVeng Pro more and more, and I'm starting to discover some of the features like the consoles, and that's what I want to talk about today. So let's go ahead and fire it up, and I'll show you what I mean. I upgraded to Mac OS X High Sierra this week because I started to have some issues with the Mac that I think were attributed just to some incompatible software, to be honest, or some older software, I should say. So I went ahead and upgraded. I took the plunge, even though I've been holding back. Generally, I would always upgrade Mac software whenever I had an update. I had that full confidence. But when they took away Telnet with High Sierra, I've been holding back. But it was time. It was time to go ahead and get upgraded. So I've had a little bit of lag this morning on I've had a few drop frames, not on the internet connection, but on the rendering. So we'll see if Eve impacts that or not. Not that it's Eve's fault, but anyway. So here it comes up, we have the virtual machine. And I'm going to use Chrome because there are some Chrome extensions that support copy-paste. I can't really say I have those working yet to sort of show them to you. But yes, I meant EVeng. Okay, it's already come up, as you can see, folks. But I want to show you. Yeah, not sure what happened there, folks. OBS crashed and came right back up, and it looks like it's working. Sorry about that. Again, that's the High Sierra. You know how you can sort of sense that there's some sort of issue? And right before the stream, I noticed that there was some rendering lag in OBS. And it's interesting that I started this virtual machine and started Chrome and then crashed. But anyway, hopefully it'll be stable now. Sorry about that. So we've got Eve, and we've already got the login screen. Now, this is what I want to highlight. Typically, I think in Community Edition, you only get the native console, and which is great. It's web-based. The console I'm going to show you, HTML5 console, looks very similar to the default console that you get. But there are some very important differences, and I think the native console, one of those is the interaction with the virtual machine, like saving, doing Wireshark captures, saving your captures, uploading configurations, especially saving configurations on your routers, downloading them to your PC, uploading them to your PC. And so, yeah, some of those things. And with the HTML5 console, which you will see, is that everything, is going to launch in a browser. And it works very well. Like, it's interesting how the Wireshark, which I don't know how they do this. I don't know if this is a VNC render into HTML5 that is, a VNC into the virtual machine and launching. I don't know how this stuff is working in the back end, but I like it. It works great. And this alone might be a reason for me, actually, whenever my trial is over, to purchase the Pro Edition. But your native console, of course, your community, it's one everyone's used to, and it is web-based. And there are some things, of course, that you have to do in order to access the, sort of to like if you want to use your own, like PuTTY, your own terminal application, you have to do some things potentially to make sure that you can log in and connect. You don't really have to worry about any of that with HTML5 console, because The HTML5 functionality is very rich and works really well, such that I'm not really worried about using putty. I mean, at some point I may want to switch, just because just like Tony was saying in his stream the other day, he's intentionally kind of making it hard on himself for the lab, because he is trying to emulate kind of what the lab environment is going to be, the real lab. So yes, I will probably be switching over back to just plain old terminal and things like that. We'll see. But as you'll see here with the HTML5 console, this is your same old web interface, right? You're not really going to see much difference here. But if I start all nodes on this little lab, which has created some controversy on Instagram, I'm looking forward to kind of revealing this on Instagram, because I've had some, I won't say debates, but I've had a lot of back and forth on this particular problem. So we're going to, a couple things I'll highlight too. And again, I haven't been using this to a great extent, but under the export all configs, as many of you know, there are some things to manage in terms of your configurations in Eve, saving your configurations so that they're there when you restart the lab. There's some really cool features here, though, in startup configs, where you can sort of dynamically, you still have to do export all your configs at least once, and then you have these config sets that you can manage, right? And then you can tell, as you'll see here, select all nodes to this config set, or set all nodes to no startup config. There's a lot of manageability here. You can, as you see, add a config set, add a new config set, rename a config set, delete. Then you can upload configs, download configs to your PC, disable boot from exported. There's also another feature here. I don't think it'll show up because I don't. Yeah, there's another button I think that shows up here whenever you upload a new config to add it to this device or no. But anyway, this is a cool feature of the Pro version. And I'll talk about the other console here in a minute, but let me just show you kind of, again, I said with HTML5, you're going to connect into a browser window that you could just peel off. Oh, duplex mismatch, that's new. So that's host 1. But yeah, as you can see here, this is really cool. I know the router's still kind of booting up. There's our switch, there's our host router, and then we can do packet captures. Now let me illustrate the usefulness of this via a case I'm working on. And this is something I learned by watching network lessons, not something I learned on my own. So we've got a host and we got a switch. And show run interface GI00. Okay, this has an IP address, duplex auto, speed auto, media type. I'm not sure what's going on there. But let's look at the switch port. Actually, what I'm going to do first is okay. That's new. Anyway, I don't think that's, we'll play with that in a minute. I don't think that's pertinent to kind of what we're looking at, but I had this case, and we're going to do a Wireshark. That's what I want to show you, how cool that works with the HTML5 console in EVeng Pro. But let's just say, for example, we have something I learned here about a switch port. Now, let's say that this switch port is configured, and this is sort of a host, right? So generally, you'd think that this is an access port. But if we do show interface GI00 trunk, all right, now this is interesting, and this really threw me off at first, and it's got a lot of people, it's got people on Instagram like, what are you, crazy or nuts? You've got an encapsulation issue on this trunk port, or you've got a, negotiation problem on this trunk port. But it says, notice, all right, so we have our show interface trunk port command here, which is normal. You have native VLAN as 1, which is normal. These are the VLANs that are allowed on the trunk. And it is VLANs, right now it's only 2, VLAN 20 and VLAN 30. Notice native VLAN 1 is not allowed. VLANs allowed in active and management domain 20 and 30. VLANs in spanning tree forwarding domain and not prune 20 and 30. Now notice here a couple of things I want to point out, and let's see if you know what I'm talking about here. So first I want to ask you, if you know, how is this port configured? What is it doing? Right? All right, first of all, is it indeed a trunk port? And if so, why does the status show non-trunking? And why does it show trunking mode as off? Obviously, we've got multiple VLANs here. We've got native VLAN 1, we've got 20 and 30, and we've got negotiate. Encapsulation says negotiate. Okay? So can you guess what the configuration of this interface is? Now, I'll give you a hint, right? I know we got CDP. Don't worry about that. We've got a hint. First of all, this is a host port. I mean, this is a host device. Granted, it is a router, but just picture this being a PC, right? That should be one hint. Okay? The other hint here is these two fields. Status is non-trunking. Doesn't mean it's not. It doesn't necessarily mean it's not configured as a trunk port. Or does it? Maybe it does. Okay, but this is rare to kind of see this on something that has multiple VLANs on it. Because generally you got multiple VLANs, the status is going to be port is in trunking mode. Also, you got trunking mode set here to off. That should be another clue, right? So if you saw just this and this, these seem to be a contradiction of configuration outputs, but they're not. The other thing here is that might indicate that this is a trunking port is that the encapsulation says negotiate. Now, encapsulation, what are we talking about? We're talking about to negotiate the trunk type, the protocol used on a trunk port. And as many know, that is done by a protocol called DTP, Dynamic Trunking Protocol. And in particular on Cisco switches, because Cisco had the proprietary ISL, Inter-Switch Link Protocol. And then they now use, of course, 802.1q, which is a standard trunking protocol. So the ports by default out of the box are generally, depending on your image, depending on your hardware, are going to attempt to negotiate what type of trunk this is going to be. Is it going to be ISL? Are we going to do 802.1q, where we manipulate the Ethernet header and add the VLAN into 802.1q format? So that is what trunking generally means. Now, let me ask you this. By general looks, there are several things that say this is a trunk port, several things that say this is not a trunk port, right? Which one is true? Well, you can't really go by encapsulation, negotiate, because, and this is throwing a lot of people off, and I understand why. I'd be the same way. If I saw this on an exam, I would probably, not that I have not seen this on an exam. Okay, I'm not saying it is or isn't, but or won't be, right? Because definitely what I'm talking about here is covered in the blueprint. But if you see encapsulation negotiate, what that means is that it is administratively configured to negotiate the encapsulation. Doesn't mean encapsulation is in use. It does not mean that DTP frames necessarily are being transmitted on the interface. I just want to make that clear, because in this case, I could tell you that there is no DTP running. And I had someone on Twitter, on Instagram was like, no, encapsulation is on. Look, it says negotiate. And that's true. That's what I would think too. I'm not saying that that's not smart to say that. I'm not saying it's not, a wise thing to say. This is a very tricky, okay, this is sneaky, guys. So because you didn't figure out, I wouldn't have figured out, most likely. don't worry about it. Someone did in Discord. Bashy Mashy, I think, figured it out in Discord. So good for you, Bashy Mashy. So that's the point here, and I'll show you. But the encapsulation is configured administratively to negotiate. Does not mean it is, and we'll see why. The other clues you should get are, like I said, non-trunking off. Now, how could a non-trunking port, and this is the answer, but how could a non-trunking port have multiple VLANs allowed? Think about that a second. What kind of switch port would support multiple VLANs, but not necessarily be a trunk configured as a trunk port? And you got it right, of course. It is a voice. It is a port configured with a voice VLAN, right? So that is the answer, and that is why you see there are two VLANs. Even though there's a native VLAN here of one, there's no switch port trunk mode configured. There's no switch port trunk VLAN allowed. Nothing like that. But just because an interface is not configured as a trunk does not mean you cannot run this command. That's what kind of threw me off. Like, I didn't think you would run show interface trunk on a port when it's not a trunk port, but you can. So let's look at the running configuration. And there it is, folks. So notice we have statically or administratively configured the port to be an access port. Now, granted, I am not using the switch port trunk no negotiate command. I don't even know if you could issue that here. Let's see. All right, so it says I can use either .1q, ISL, or negotiate. Okay, negotiate. How do you disable on this image? Switch port trunk. Can you disable? Oh, no negotiate. That's right, I knew that. Okay, so it does allow you to configure it. And now if we do show interface GI00 trunk. Look at that, guys. Interesting. Now I thought this no negotiate command was in regards to DTP negotiation. Am I thinking about the wrong encapsulation here? Good question. If any of you know, hit me up. Maybe the person on Instagram was right. My assumption here is that this was talking about the DTP negotiation. Which is the encapsulation type, right? All right, we'll clarify that in a minute. But as you can see, this is the answer. We've got a voice VLAN and we've got a data VLAN. That is why we're seeing what we're seeing, okay? And I can verify that if you do I did a packet capture. I don't know if I still have it. Doesn't matter. There are no DTP frames. So even though it says encapsulation negotiate, unless I'm misunderstanding what this means about trunk negotiation, there are no DTP frames here. That's why it says status non-trunking. That's why it says trunking mode is off. And these are allowed VLANs, so that's the answer. In fact, we look at show interface GI00 switch port, static access. The switch port is enabled, operational mode. Administrative trunking encapsulation is negotiate still. Operational trunking encapsulation is active, and negotiative trunking is off. So this is what I had before I used the no negotiate. We're going to make it a trunk port in a second and just see what it does. But I'm going to illustrate this feature of the HTML5 console by doing a capture. And as you'll see, this is pretty cool. What happens is this comes up. Oh, I'm logged in as guest. It normally doesn't do this, folks. It comes into an HTML5 window. This is cool. I like this. I think this is slick. And it normally doesn't do that. Let's try this again. I don't know why my AC just kicked off, and sometimes weird things happen on my network when AC kicks off. Like the drain on the startup of the power. Sometimes. Okay. All right, so we have here spanning tree protocol, which we expect BPDUs being transmitted by the. So this is something else, folks. You'll notice if you have and I did not know this either, but you'll notice that if you have a hey, we got a new follower. I think that's what that is. I don't have my Streamlabs. Let me load up my Streamlabs labels. Thank you, whoever that was. I really appreciate it. Segar Devil, hey, he's from the from Discord. Hey, good to have you, my friend. Glad to see you here. Hope you're enjoying the stream. Feel free to join us in the chat and hang out. Appreciate the follow. So yeah, we've got this port. Now this is interesting. So we have obviously this is an access port, right? But it is still sending BPDUs. Configuration BPDUs. This switch thinks that he is the root because he's the only switch on the network. And notice he's doing PVST plus as a destination, which I find interesting. Normally this would go to spanning tree for bridges, which is the IEEE 802.1d address. But the destination address here is PVST plus. Interesting. I'd like to look into that a little bit and see why, because I know that generally what the switch will do is it has the intelligence to determine it sort of has to make a decision, an algorithm, do I use PVST plus or do I use the 802.1d? And generally I think it's only done when it receives an 802.1d BPDU. I could be wrong about that. I'm going to look at that again, but generally I think it will kind of default to PVST plus, and if it receives an 802.1d BPDU, it will revert to that or send both, depending on the situation. I'm reviewing this Action Network lessons right now. I'm in the Layer 2 section. But the point is here, folks, you do not see any DTP packets or frames, right? So I'm curious what this negotiation is. Maybe that is PVST plus negotiation? We shall see. All right, this is getting kind of annoying, so let's see if we can resolve this. All right, duplex mismatch discovered. No, not full duplex. RSGI 00. Duplex. Auto. Negotiation auto. So that's odd. Show interface GI 00. I've gotten this from time to time with this image. Link type is force up. Yeah, why is that? Okay, let's just change it. I'm not getting off on a little bit of a tangent here. GI 00. Let's go speed 1000. duplex full. We'll see if our messages go away, and then we'll send them. This is probably just a software issue, folks. All right, so getting back to what we're talking about, no DTP on here, right? We do have CDP. We do have loop. Configuration test protocol. I'm not even sure what that is, but I've seen this a lot. That may be making sure there's not a loop, so it's sending out the frame, and if it gets it back on the same interface, it will know that if anyone knows what that is, what is the ether type or the protocol type here? Ether type loop data, which is protocol type what? We have to go back up to this part of the frame here. This is an interesting frame. Source destination is himself. Okay. Global unique, individual address unicast. Source, individual address unicast. Configuration test protocol, loopback. How does it know that? All right, I'm going to look that up. Kind of a side check. It's good to be curious, folks. All right, so I'm going to illustrate kind of just to make the point here. I'm going to mark this packet, and I'm going to do a file. So we're running in a browser. This is a HTML5 client connected to the virtual machine, and actually running this in the virtual machine. So how do I save this to my, desktop? So the way to do it is you have to stop the capture, save as. You save it to this folder in Guacamole, download, loop frame. And we're going to save it. You get the error, but you can ignore that. And notice it's going to put it in your download folder or your browser. And I think I did a video of this. Yeah, there it is. Isn't that cool? Like, that is so easy. How hard is that? So there it is. I meant to just export the marked frame. That's okay. So that's where we have it. Oh, by the way, that is the other dump from earlier that shows. You've seen it on the screen, but this is from earlier test as well. No DTP at all. Actually, this is after. This is my TCNs, yeah. But that's what a DTP looks like, right? Anyone remember the, do you remember the destination address for DTP? And do you remember the protocol ether type? I do not, so I'm going to look at it right now. Notice this is sent as, are all these sent? I think they are sent encapsulation ISL. As an ISL frame. At least it's identified as an ISL frame because of the destination address. But remember, this destination address is used for a lot of protocols. It's used for VTP, CDP, PAGP, UDLD, and ISL. It's Cisco proprietary, so it's being marked here by Wireshark as ISL, but it's not an ISL frame. DSAP, SSAP, control. Interesting. So here's the Ethernet frame. And destination. Interesting. Because of the first three hexadecimal segments, 01000C, that's how it's identified as ISL. But then if you look at the full address, It's either CDP, VTP, DTP, PAGP, or UDLD on Cisco gear. So yeah, this is DTP. And it says ISL negotiated. That's how we, operating in administrative mode. Operating mode is ISL, administrative mode is negotiated. Operating mode is access, administrative mode is auto. So I think this is what you would see if you have an access port, but trunking is still on. But let's see. So that's our Wireshark. Isn't that cool? So that's the HTML5 console, what it does. All right, let's go back to our device here. And let's say interface GI00. We're going to say switch port mode trunk. Switch port incap.1q. Oh, we can set an ether type value. I didn't know that. Switch port.1q. Incap. Interface usually only. Okay. So now let's see how that impacts. Show interface GI00 trunk. Okay, yeah. Interesting how that is set to auto. And I wonder if it's sending any DTP packets now. It's probably not. I would say that it's probably not because it's still an access port. But if we were to, so again, you've got your administrative mode and you've got your operating mode. And I think it's important to distinguish that. As we see here, and this is what's so tricky, is if you look at this, you say encapsulation is .1q. Oh, it's running 802.1q encapsulation. It's not. It's configured to do that if we transition to trunking mode. So if I were to change this port right now to a trunk, it will automatically use .1q encapsulation. So yeah, remember, there are a lot of things you can configure on a switch port, whether that be access or trunk, and those features, some of them will not take effect unless the switch port is in the operating mode that supports that administratively configured feature. And the output can be sneaky about that. So notice it's still off. Now if we change it though, instead of switch port mode access, we're going to say switch port mode, access unconditionally. That's what it is now. Switch port mode trunk. Now we see spanning tree for bridges, right? Which is a different destination address. 0180C2000. We're still sending PBST, but we're now sending spanning free for bridges, 802.1d compatible BPDUs. We're sending both, right? We are not sending DTP. We're still not doing any negotiation of the trunking, even though this shows 802.1q encapsulation. I'll bet it does. Yeah. Which is fine. It's not, it doesn't say negotiation anymore. But I'll bet if I do interface GI00, no switch port, no negotiate, because I've statically configured the encapsulation type, yeah, Now, though, notice trunking mode is on. That should be your clue right there. Trunking mode is on. And status is trunking, right? Now, if we want to enable DTP, we do switch port, trunk, mode, trunk. Or no, switch port, trunk, in cap, negotiate. I think this is a image issue because I don't think do these images even support ISL? I guess they would. Do show run interface chat 00. I think the issue here too is that I have it configured this way. So interface chat 00, switch port trunk, in cap. Now it's ISL, administrative and operational. Negotiation of trunking is on. Because we turned off no negotiate. Notice this, spanning tree for bridges. Now, we lost our PBSTs, right? Okay, now let's change it back. Interface chat 00, switch port, trunk, in cap, negotiate. Port security trunk, negotiate the encapsulation. Interesting. You can do that on other images, I believe. Okay, let's try that. Switchboard mode dynamic desirable. No, switchboard mode encapsulation negotiate. Now it lets us do it. Okay. Now we see DTP packets. And that's really when you start to see them, right? Dynamic trunking protocol. All right, folks. This wasn't really intended to be sort of a review of trunking, but it is a good review nevertheless. That is how Wireshark works in the EVeng console under HTML5 console. The other option, folks, is, which I think I've shown before. Let's log out of this. Which we could have just done that. And I didn't really understand the difference until I read the cookbook, which, by the way, cookbook is great, folks. The EVeng Pro cookbook documentation is pretty awesome, and I really like it. So we've got the HTML5 engine. Get to log in again. Oh, here we go. This is what I wanted. So this is basically VNC into the, this is great if you're trying to run. Notice I'm just using my browser. If you're running somewhere where your PC is locked down or the network is locked down and, you know, or you're just using a particular operating system that you're having issues with, this is going to be the most stable option, which is you are running your basic VNC into the virtual machine. You can still do everything. You still have to log in here now using the native console. But Wireshark, your everything is going to open inside this VM, right? There we go. How are we doing on our frames here, running frames? Good. Packet loss is not bad. So here you go. This runs inside, as you can see, this virtual machine. You can do a full screen. Right? You still have some limitations, obviously. But if you do a Wireshark capture, for example, it's going to run inside this VM, and this is going to be should be a stable option for you, right? This does kind of like what the native, it does RDP, and here you have your packet captures. And I think you can save them the same way to save them to your PC if you want. But this is a very stable, allows you to work kind of in a sandbox, as it were, and gets the job done. So those are the different consoles. I really like so far the HTML5. I think that's what I'm going to continue to use. All right. So that took a while, but that was some good stuff. Hope you found the answer to the question you might have had about how that port was working. It was an access port, but it looked like it was trunking. So just be aware of those differences. Hope you enjoyed seeing how the HTML5 console works in EVeng Pro. I plan to demo some other functions of this as I learn about them, like the configs. I'm going to do these in little snippets going forward just to kind of give an overall, it's kind of, I'm going to probably make it into more of a series on YouTube. Tell people who are, I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just helping you see if the features are enough for you to justify getting a pro version and if that works for you. Netbox and Azure. So yesterday I was on a conference call pretty much all day. And as a matter of fact, it's funny, WebEx, if you're using a personal conference room, we had a project manager who had a bunch of people on the call all day long, people in and out. And at 10 hours, it like shut him down. They gave him a warning. You're about to hit your hour limit. So, and we have WebEx, routers. We have WebEx. We're so into WebEx at our company. A lot of companies are. But I'd never seen that happen before. Cut them off at 10 hours. And then, of course, just fired it right back up again. But I was on conference calls all day working on a project, which is going to continue. I thought it was going to wind down yesterday, but we had some successes. We had some not successes that we have to, redo. So at a later date, I'm going to continue to work a little bit on this project. But in the meantime, when not speaking or having to concentrate, fully, I was working on a little project to spin up an Azure box, virtual machine, and put netbox in there, and it works. It works great. If you're interested in that, also, set up my first GitHub repo. And if you like to do that yourself, I posted a picture of it on Twitter and Instagram, I think, and maybe in Discord. But it's cool. It's a nice little IPAM. It's free. It's open source. You can even become a contributor. And it runs great in Azure. As a matter of fact, I picked like the smallest, cheapest virtual machine you can run. And it works great. I mean, there's no lag. There was no lag. It's a cool little project if you're trying to, if you're evaluating netbox to use it. I wanted to use it to play with it only because recently I got a new cable modem and router here at the house, and I like to keep track of my lab IPs and things like that. So I've been doing it in a spreadsheet. I'm like, let me do it in netbox. I've been wanting to learn that product, so I got a little time here. And I spun it up in Azure. As a matter of fact, I tried to use the Azure CLI, which for the most part was successful. And that's what I put on GitHub. So if you check out the GitHub site and you're curious about doing this yourself, I documented in the repo I started another one too, EVeng on gcloud. More on that later. But all I have in here mainly is a documentation, like a project log. So this is kind of the steps I took to get it going. And there are some Azure CLI commands, like how to deploy your virtual machine. Actually, this is to deploy a VNet. Your storage account. These are the Azure steps, some of the Azure components you need. Then you do resource group, and this is actually the storage for the storage account. This is to how to deploy a new subnet. This I just did with Azure CLI. Deploying the VM, though, I used a template an Azure template and saved it as JSON files. So we have 2 JSON templates, which I put here on the GitHub to deploy basically Ubuntu 16.04 LTS. And, you can adjust these parameters a little if you want to do the same in your own. Of course, you have to have your VNet, you have to have your resource group already, but there are templates for that as well. And then you deploy your VM, and you can use this from the Azure Marketplace. It'll fire up 16.04, deploy it, and with the machine type here, I used a very the smallest machine type you can use, which is A1 Basic in Azure, and that would come out to $18.60 a month is what they estimate. But that is only if you're running the machine full time. So what I did is I set up the machine. Well, first of all, I shut it down when I'm not using it. Like I only use it, I have to log into the portal, and I could automate this as well to log into Azure portal through my terminal here on this machine. I could do AZ login and then script out booting up the virtual machine, and then I just wait a little bit, and then I can start using netbox. So, but if you leave, so I also have a policy set up in Azure where it shuts it down every day. If I leave it on by accident, it will shut it down at night. So this should be really cheap to run, folks. And that just gives you an idea for a Ubuntu 16.04 server running A1 Basic. If there's some things you want to try out, if you want to demo them, and you just want to put them up there on the cloud because you want to learn the cloud, or you want to learn how to, if you want to get better at GitHub, Git cloning, if you want to get better at JSON and setting up JSON templates, go for it. I think it's a great project, and I learned some things for sure doing this. Then I have the NSG, Network Security Group, which is essentially sort of your firewall. And this is actually the command I use here in the terminal to deploy it. And then this is some of the setup for the netbox itself. Not a lot. I did use, there's several options you can use for your web server. There's Nginx, and you can use Apache. You can use really any web server that you want. I use Apache just because, I work with some Apache folks at my job. Not just Apache, they do other things too. But it's been particularly interesting working with Apache and the load balancer F5. So, I played with that, and I had a few issues, but I got those worked out. And that was it. So that was a lot of fun, to be honest. But that's my project log. You can also go in here, and these are Netbox Azure. There's a README, and then Azure CLI. So under Azure CLI, this is how I did a storage account. This is how I did the VNets, or the VNet, and these are the templates for the server itself. So these are my parameter file. So it's up there, my first GitHub repo that's public. I've got some GitLab repos, but that's my first public one. I actually added to the overlay and to all the places I have links. If you're interested in that. And it was fun. There's some other products I want to try, or that I want to spin up and just try it. I want to do eveng in the cloud. So more on that later. There are obviously some particular issues with running eveng in a virtual environment in the cloud because you need, support for nested virtualization. And not all cloud providers have that, and even some that do, it's not a standard configuration, or it's not really particularly, plug and play. There's some customization you have to do to deploy, and beyond that, I'm curious how expensive it's going to be, because even on Google Cloud, I was playing with that last night, or 2 a.m. in the morning when I'm still on the conference call. And you have to use, it's a pretty high tier server that you have to use. So the estimate I saw last night is to run eveng or any viral whatever GNS3, to run it using the viral images, for example, in Google Cloud. It looks like it's going to cost about $100 a month, but that's if I was running it 24/7. So the trick is going to be, what would it cost sort of on a monthly basis, and then maybe how could I get that down to where I've got like plenty of CPU and RAM, but to run big labs, but how much would that cost over a year or 2 or 3 versus like buying a server and investing in that? So it's going to be interesting to see. I want to do the experiment just for academic purposes, and there's some practical potential use of that. Maybe I shut it down, I keep it there, and don't get charged anything, because in Google Cloud you get charged by the second, not by the hour. I'm not sure how Azure does. I think Azure does it by the minute. Google does by the second, which could save you some money, in the long run. But what would it cost me to build it there and just have it? And in case, say I want to do a monster lab, would it cost me any money just to keep it there and just pay for it when I use it? That's another potential use case. So more on that coming. Current attack plan on the written, folks, is work-life study balance. Of course, I had study in there because I'm going to be traveling this week, so I won't be able to do a lot of streaming, but I've still made the goal of streaming on my regular schedule, or at least close to, not necessarily time, but at least once a day, give you an update, any tidbits I'm learning. I've got some developments going on in my work that are fascinating to me right now, and it's I think you may find it interesting too. It is related to anyway, I'll share more of that later as time comes. I don't even know like some of the changes that are coming officially, but I sort of know them anyway. But there are going to be some changes on, for Land Tamer coming up in personal life in terms of work and responsibilities, and of course technology focus. So we're going to be probably getting into some new technologies that I'll of course be sharing some of that stuff that I can. But anyway, still working on going over my failed notes, making a little bit of progress despite some of the work that's going on. That's hard to balance, but I still try to find some time for study. Networklessons.com, I've started going through that in a systematic way. I'm in layer 2, and that's going to be my approach right now. I'm going to kind of balance both, because some of the written study or written fail material is going to lead me into certain chapters in Network Lessons. But I'm going to systematically probably go through each lesson, and that's going to be my approach to conquer the written. I've got a redistribution chart. I actually talked about that. I'm going to add OSPF and OSPF and EIGRP and the EIGRP in different ASs. So I'm working on that right now. It's complicated. So I'm going to share some of that as I go along. String updates, I'm having all kind of ISP issues. You've fallen in Discord. I've got a new cable modem and router that is leased, so that I can point the finger back at my ISP. It's been pretty stable so far, but now I know how to call them out. I know what to look for in the logs, thanks to one of the technicians. So I'm going to be holding them accountable, and hopefully there won't be interruptions to the stream. Maybe it was the modem. I don't know. We'll find out. Content updates. I'm going to do some more demo videos. I'm going to try to do more as I get to using eveng a little more and doing here little mini labs or POCs, proof of concepts. I'm just going to be posting more content on Instagram and also short snippets of video on Instagram and on YouTube. So be sure to follow me there. I am tinkering around with the idea of website/blog also. I've had in my mind kind of some bias against that, just because I want to sort of distinguish the content on this channel as, kind of using newer platforms, not relying on some of the older, what I call legacy. Still of course, they're not, I say legacy doesn't mean that they're outdated or irrelevant, but I'm reassessing kind of my own attitudes towards that and needing to sort of expand my reach, and maybe get back to doing a little blogging here and there. And then GitHub. Definitely check out GitHub. Guys, Git is on the new Evolving Technologies Guide. I posted about this the other day. I updated the blueprint, the fill-in blueprint spreadsheet. So it's out here on Google Drive. If you're sort of tracking your progress towards the CCI routing and switching written, this might be very useful to you. So it's here. Anybody can use it, download it as Excel, whatever. But I added the Evolving Technologies 1.1 material, 7.1 material. So Git is on here. So if you're not using Git, which you probably are, Git and SVN. I'm not using SVN. I want to learn that. I may work on that a little bit next. But you could download this. You definitely want to focus on Git. And I'm going to be transitioning some content now from the Google Drive, which is very convenient for me, but not necessarily the most practical to share. So I may be doing transitioning over time some of that content to GitHub repos. So it'd be easier for you to reference or contribute to or update or whatever. But I really love the Git source control configuration. All right, today's trivia. Quick, man, we've been talking for a while here. What are the 4 parts of the PPP discovery phase? So as you know, you've got discovery phase and you got the session phase. And I posted the other day on the Google Drive, which these PCAPs are definitely going to be moved to a repo or copied to a repo. An abbreviated PCAP of this process. So if in your mind you already have the answer, that's great. Always remember PADI, PADO, PADR, PADS, right? Which is offer. You have this discovery offer. You have discovery reply. No, initiation. PADI and is initiate session. PADO is the offer. PADR is a request. And PADS is a session establishment. Those are the 4 phases. Let's see. They are here under captures. And let's see if we have... I thought I put them on here. Okay, I need to do that. Anyway, those are the 4 phases, and the PCAPs I wanted to look at because I wanted to see there are actually different ether types used for some of the different PPPoE frames. So the discovery is its own ether type, and that is on, and I think it's important to know this if you're doing, this could come up in like the diag part of the lab, I would think, or if you're looking at PCAPs, it would be good to know these ether types. And these are listed here in the drill sheet. I actually made a list of some of these. So as you can see, 8863 is PPPoE discovery, and then 8864 is a session. And the session phase, of course, that's when we have LCP and NCP, we have negotiation. You know, this is essentially when I'm done with the discovery phase, each end of the point-to-point connection knows and has verified, and when I say verified, I mean, in other words, there is a magic, well, that actually comes in the session phase. But anyway, at the end, we know what each other's MAC address is to communicate with. Because you could be on, even though it's, you know, like in PPPoE, you need that discovery phase because you could be getting frames reflected back to yourself, or you could be on an Ethernet segment and you want to make sure that you're initiating with the correct host. So that's why there's this discovery phase where we learn the MAC address of someone who's trying to talk to us, and vice versa. And we sort of get a verification of that by means of the request and the offer and the session packets. So we make sure we're talking to the right person. Then we go into the session establishment, right? All right, next bit of trivia we'll ask, and hopefully that'll be tomorrow. That'll be able to stream. I'm on the road tomorrow for work, but I should be arriving in enough time to actually do a quick stream. And we'll talk about iOS XE versus plain old iOS. In your mind, can you answer right now, what makes iOS XE different and thusly better than iOS? What are the advantages of iOS XE over iOS? And how does that change, how you manage a device? All right, to wrap things up, Meat Chunks, this is an excellent podcast from Packet Pushers on building automation framework. I love it. It's like 2-something hours long. It's long, but it's great, and it's right up my alley right now. Just put it that way. And then the redistribution chart, like I said, I'm working on this. It's not completely filled in. I'll let you know when it is. Or if you want help filling in, some of the chart items that I added are OSPF to OSPF redistribution. So I'm going to add the details there as well as EIGRP to EIGRP. It's complicated, and I don't understand it all right now, the implications, but I want to. And this is a great, I listened to this morning, this talk by GaryVee. It just got me fired up, guys. It's so good, and it's long. But if you just want to listen to the first part before it goes into Q&A, that's fine. But if you want to get pumped up and excited about, whatever it is you're doing, however you're trying to win, check it out. And that's all I got. I hope you all have a great Sunday. Rest your weekend. Get motivated. Spread the good bits. By the way, our subs. If you're a sub to the channel, we've got our new emote. Rocking that now. Made some other enhancements to the channel in terms of the layout. Twitch is changing some of the layout functions, so I made some adjustments to that. And we're going to try to keep putting out content that's helpful and or useful to anyone else who's on a journey for CCI routing and switching or any other certification, and you want to get motivated and you want to keep, you want to work hard, and you want to commune with others who understand your battles. And understand but I love it. I enjoy it. And I'm looking forward to interacting with you all. So hit us up on the Discord, of course, Twitter, YouTube. If you've got that Amazon Prime sub just sitting there, hit that sub button here on Twitch. Give us a sub, give us a follow, support the channel. I would appreciate that. Thanks so much for stopping in. I appreciate your time, and I'm very grateful that we have such a great community. And, that's all I got, folks. Have a great rest of your day. We shall see you back here tomorrow, hopefully, on the Land Tamer stream.